Welcome everyone. Firstly, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know there's probably people on from all over the world. So, and as I said, I'm being joined by Chris, who's on the videos. Chris has recently moved, so she's getting settled into a new home. Doesn't have kind of all the usual things that she's able to share in these sessions, but she does have her family record book, as do I, because that was something that people were keen to have us show. Woo! Was a page of that. So Susan's asking about how and when the 1921 census will be released in Scotland. Actually, I think I did get that information about Scotland, unless I'm thinking, no, actually, I don't think we know yet about the 1921 census.
I've got a feeling I heard something about it. Is it coming on Find My Past or something? Let me have a quick look.
No, that's the English one. They announced the English one a couple of weeks ago. But the latest that I've heard from Scotland's people is that just that it will be released, but they're working on information. Let me just double check that. It will be on Scotland's people initially. That's always the case. And like the 1911 census, I suspect that it will only be on Scotland's people. Yeah, it could be 2022. Yeah, so I'm just checking out here about that. Oh yes, yeah, here's the information from Scotland's people. Yeah, we will release indexed images of the 1921 Scottish census on Scotland's people and in the Scotland's People Centre in the latter half of 2022.
Oh, it's quite a while then.
Yeah, not looking good. We'll keep you updated on progress via our digital channels. So if you're interested in that, I would say go on to the Scotland's People site and sign up for the newsletter, because that you get as soon as they know anything, well, not as soon as, but they email out and let people know. So yeah, it's going to be a while, unfortunately, about that, which is a shame. So yeah, so just to kind of, I suppose, recap what's been going on the MOOC. So this is a strange run of the MOOC in that we're using last March run of the MOOC's kind of platform, and that's unusual for us. It's a new thing that FutureLearn is trying out. So it's hard for us to know how many people are actually active on the course right now, because we're seeing people from previous and current. So yeah, it's so we've been going through week 1 and week 2, now finally doing the end of week 3. So kind of looking at well, how to do research planning and consider issues with records transcribing and so on and so forth. And this week, week 3, we've gotten into looking at particular types of records. Now, I mean, the thing about this course is we don't get particularly into depth with any one country. It's designed to be an overview of how to do genealogical research kind of more generally. So there's usually a lot of questions, and the questions that we do have are that people have put in are about real particulars. How do I find people in the Irish, in Irish, early Irish, and things like that? But I suppose what I would say overall is to go to genealogy societies, family history societies for the particular areas that you're interested in, and look at their websites, maybe join. Those are typically founts of expertise and knowledge, and often have online records that they have digitized and people can offer advice. So that I would strongly recommend if you're interested in a particular area of the world, doing that, but also maybe thinking about taking a class that focuses particularly on that area of the world. And there's a number of free providers that offer classes. The Family Search Wiki has some not classes like this, like where there's people real time involved, but classes that you can take that are don't have real-time tutor input, but also Pharos, PHARS, is a great tutor outfit for the UK, and the Genealogical Society in the States has some wonderful classes for US based, and there's wonderful resources for Australia and New Zealand as well. So yeah, just I would say, further your education for looking at particular areas of the world. So I'm just looking at the Q&A space there. So yeah, so what we're going to do is, Chris, would you mind giving, just giving us a kind of a heads up about where you're at with your research?
Yes, I will.
Yeah.
What week are we on the course, Tisha?
Week 3. So we're
okay. So there's
yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I suppose, there's now, how many years ago did we do this course? And things have moved quite a way. I've been up to Aberdeen in the last few years and actually found the grave, which was, I have to say, finding a grave of an ancestor is a really moving occasion. And they've got the most amazing records and old maps of graves. It's quite interesting to get into. And if you phone the burial and cemeteries, they can usually tell you who is buried where or who's in which layer. This is in Scotland, but I went up to Aberdeen and found but I think the biggest thing that I found, I eventually did an ancestor and joined Ancestry Worldwide, and I actually found some records for the Riepenhausens for Charles in Germany, which was a huge, just an amazing thing to find. And I always thought he'd moved, but maybe because the Kingdom of Hanover was no longer under British sort of rule. But actually, I think it was the case of the wicked stepmother. His mother dies when he's about 8 or 9, I think, in childbirth, and his father marries again very quickly. And then Charles sets off, he lives north of Hanover, goes to the coast, gets on a ship, and never goes back. And then, as you know, he works up to become a sea captain. So I haven't found anything else about the Riepenhausens, and it's quite daunting because you have to actually think, because they're going to now live through 2 wars, and I'm not quite sure how ready I am to do that research. I will at some point, but got to find sort of out and whether there are any ancestors left. I know he had a couple of brothers. Now whether they've got descendants or not, I'm not sure. But I'm still incredibly proud of that German connection, having lived all those years in Germany. It was really quite amazing. And I say, to find the grave, and there's quite a few, and the grave is marked Hossen, not Riepenhausen. It's marked Hossen. And there's quite a few of the family in there. So that's kind of the biggest thing that I found with the Riepenhausens. My research has gone on a bit from myself. I've never found out my grandmother's father was. That's still a mystery. Another very sad thing, which is not quite coming through in the videos, my great-great-grandfather, I could not find a death record for him. They owned a pub in Renfrew, which is where I lived before I moved south. And I eventually found a death record for him. He had been in a lunatic asylum for 29 years, and that came as a huge shock. I actually lived next to it's now not a lunatic asylum. It's got lovely grounds where I walked the dog, but that just, in those days, obviously he had dementia, I think, through alcoholism, and he was just in 29 years. So there's always something to find with your even when you have a stop, there'll be something happens. And the nice thing is to keep in touch with like-minded people, because somebody will raise a point and you'll think, oh, I'll just go and check that, or I can help, or I can do something. So yes, that's where I'm at the moment. So I think my next thing, because I've moved down to the south of England, I now want to go up to Kew, to the main resource place, and see if I can find which ships Charles Riepenhausen sailed on and which ships he was captain of.
Yeah, that would be quite fun to find out more
good.
information. Yeah. So I've got a question here from Susan asking about if there's a 1939 register available for Scotland. And yes, there is. It's not nearly as, well, it's nowhere near as accessible as the 1939 register for England and Wales. You have to apply to see it, and it's the National Records of Scotland that hold that. I'll put in the chat here the link to that, the website that has the information. There's a form to fill in. There might be a fee to pay as well, but yeah, what they say is that yeah, provide limited information on the named individual, namely their address in 1939, marital status, age, and occupation. So they are, yeah, keeping it, still keeping it closed. I think it's the 100-year, yeah, it's the 100-year period issue. And there's been a couple of freedom of information requests to open it, but those have been denied. Basically, so aside from being, you know, for full opening, but people can apply for particular extracts for particular individuals. You have to apply, provide evidence that the person has died. So on that. So yeah, let's see. So I've got some questions. Let's see the Q&A here. Oh, Chris, you're dealing with the shipping records.
Yeah.
That's great. Good. Yeah, so we had some questions that came in on the forums. Deborah, who I think might be on today, was asking about Canadian ancestors who coming from Ireland and Scotland and England during the 1800s and settling in Eastern Ontario and not, you know, being able to find out a huge amount about them, particularly in the home country. And did they come directly to Canada or via the US? Where you know, where did they come from? And she was particularly curious about whether there's a database in the UK that gives information of people who left for North America. And the answer is no, unfortunately not. Passenger lists weren't required for outgoing ships from the UK until 1890. So there's no, you know, sort of central repository of information on people who left. Of course, there were passenger lists taken before that, but they weren't, you know, required by the government. So they're kind of hit and miss. Their survival is hit and miss as well. But there are some websites that do transcribe passenger lists and older passenger lists. So if you Google passenger list transcriptions, I'm trying to think of there's one in particular, transcriptions. Let's see here. Yes, immigrantships.net. Let me get the URL for that. I'll put that in the chat so that folks can see that. So that immigrantships.net, they have many, many passenger lists that have been transcribed. So that might be a possibility. You never know what you might find.
I think if you're a cook, though, you won't be on a passenger list. You'll be on a crew list.
Yeah, sorry, this is a different question than the one you were answering.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's for Jem. Sorry, that was
okay. But that's a good point. So if if you're crew, then yeah, you'd be on a different list for sure, and maybe merchant marine lists or something like that.
Which Q have got.
Yeah, Q have
passenger lists are fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I was going to say is that there are some border crossing records, but they don't really come up until the early 20th century, so 1908, between Canada and the US, but those are easy to find. Those are on Ancestry and Find My Past, and actually the National Archives of Canada have some of that information online as well. But what I would really suggest is contacting the Ontario Genealogical Society if you haven't done that already, because they are amazing. And I'll just type in their web address. So, but they're a really large genealogical society, really active. They have interesting conferences every year. I mean, recently those have been online, but they have some online records, and so I would contact them. Yeah, they're really good. The other thing you might think about doing is looking. There's a gentleman named David Dobson. I'll type his thing into the chat as well, and he's written a number of books. I mean, many books, that he looks at different record sets basically and transcribes information, names and just whatever comes from the record. But he's primarily interested in people from England, Scotland, Ireland going to the North America, so Canada and the US. And so yeah, Ancestry have about 35 of his books that have been transcribed and made available. So that's something. But you might also look in your local library. They might have some David Dobson books. So just a thought there. Yeah. Yeah, and Deborah had some UK family connections that she was particularly searching for, and looks like a lot of people who were born baptized in England sort of early 1800s, so 1815, 16, 1782, 1795. I mean, for those, you're looking at baptism records from, well, probably the Church of England, but they might have been nonconformist, so not Church of England and another denomination. But Ancestry, Find My Past, they have different parish record sets. So if you can't find them in one, you might find them in the other. But parish records are challenging because they don't have as much corroborative information as many civil records do. So that can be difficult. And Irish back to the early 1800s is quite difficult. Now, somebody else had a question about, well, a couple of other folks saying that they've had brick walls in Ireland. Chris, do you have any Irish?
Well, interestingly, not to steal, Ancestry suddenly changed my ethnicity. I don't know how they can suddenly changed it, because I was sort of mainly Scottish with some Scandinavian or European, which fits in. And then suddenly they said, no, actually you're 99% Scottish and 1% Irish. I don't know where the 1% Irish is. I've yet to find that out. So no, I haven't really, not that I know of, got any connection with Ireland. And some of the group have, the wee Ginny group that I'm part of, and it's very difficult to do Irish because there's so many missing records. Better than it used to be, but it's still quite challenging.
Well, yeah, that's what I would say about your DNA ethnicity and the 1% is that's probably just noise, noise in the machine, and just disregard it. They'll do another update and everything will change again. So
yes. Just depends who's, because of course it depends on who's actually having their DNA tested. They're very much the,
yeah, absolutely. So I did have some ideas about other, because Paula basically was curious about, now she's gotten back to the 1830s in the southeast of Ireland, which I think is amazing. She can find Roman Catholic Church baptismal records, which she's found incredibly difficult to read, and I agree, they definitely can be, but she's curious about corroborating the records, and I would say it's difficult to do that that early, as lots of records just don't exist any longer. But one thing I thought you might try are tithe allotment records. and these are basically land tax, but but for supporting the church, and so it's the tithe, and these tithe allotment records for Ireland start 1823, and the ones that are available go through 1837, and they basically list the names of tenants who were resident on the land. But the issue is they don't list everybody, because not all land was eligible to be counted for the tithe. The tithe weren't payable on all land. So, but the nice thing about these is you can look at them for free on the National Archives of Ireland website, and I have that URL, which I will put in the chat as well here. So you can look at that, and I think you can look for people by name, and then you can actually see the image of the records. But the National Archives of Ireland genealogy page, which is what I've just put the URL for in the chat box, they have a number of other record sets available that they've digitized, indexed, and you can search for names for free. So a lot of them are later than the early 1800s. So I just might have a look. You know, you might get lucky and find folks, but it's probably going to be tying people to that area and seeing if there's anyone in that area that match the names that that you're finding. So yeah, I mean, I have Irish ancestry on my dad's side in particular, but they all went to the States, so it's a question for me of tracing them back from the States to Ireland. It's a little, well, it's kind of, it's an awkward time period. It's like, yeah, just pre civil registration, so you know, it's, yeah, and as always, you know, it's just Ireland on the records. There's no indication of where in
Oh
Ireland
my
it
goodness.
was.
Yeah.
But I did find what it did allow me to sort of crack it was I found one of the sisters. It was a family group that went over. So one of the sisters ended up marrying again. Her husband died, and then she ended up marrying at a point where in that state the marriage records had the information about the parent names, but also where exactly where the person was born. And a bit more information as well. So I just lucked out. And then that's assuming that her older siblings, of course, were born in the same place in Ireland. But so, you know, again, all these like, well, maybe. So yeah, let's see if we've got some other yes, other people having trouble with pre-1850 Irish records. Yes, Marilyn, absolutely. So Pat Stern was asking, she's also has brick walls with Irish ancestors, and yeah, this is, it is classic. Got back as far as my great grandfather born about 1840. No, he was married in 1869. Yeah, she was pondering emailing the church that they were married in to see if they had birth baptism records before 1869. I think that's a great idea. Yeah,
yeah,
go for that. What I would also say is have a look at the national. I mean, you don't say what church it was that he was married in. So if it was Presbyterian, Church of Ireland, Roman Catholic, because all you know, all different issues, different places to go, I should say, for obviously for all of those. But yeah, contacting the church. The other thing I would suggest is both looking at the National Archives of Ireland website for advice, because they've got a lot of information about records that are available, because there are some earlier parish records that have been digitized and are available to look at for both Church of Ireland and well, Roman Catholic in particular. So Roman Catholic parish records freely available to look at on the National Library of Ireland's website. But they're not searchable there. So they have the images, you can look at them for free, but you have to know like where and when. But the way to get around that is to look at the index on Ancestry and Find My Past, because both of those places have those records indexed, so you can search by name. But if you don't have subscriptions to either of those sites, you can then use that information, go onto the National Library of Ireland site, and then, you know, oh, right, it was this parish, this date. So then you can actually see that record for free, which is, you know, free is always good. Oh, absolutely. So yeah, but no doubt that Ireland is challenging. So Jean, you should be able to save the chat box. I think if you yeah, so so if you have the chat box up, there's where you go to type your message, right above that there's a line that says to whom that message is going, and then at the very right hand side there's three little dots, three ellipses. I'm not sure. So if you click on that, then you can save the chat. You should, now we can save the chat, but we're panelists, so I'm not sure if actually the attendees can save the chat. Try that and let us know, because I'm not sure. If you're not able to save the chat, then what I will do is I will go on to the forum where people were putting in questions for this event, which is back in week 2, and I'll put in the URLs that that, because I've got them on a Word document just to remember to cut and paste things in. Yeah, but you hopefully, fingers crossed, you'll be able to save the chat. So, but let us know if you can't do that. So, well, let us know if you can do that, because then we would just know. Yes. Oh, well, Stevie's saying you can save individual comments. So, okay. So other questions coming from the forum, and please, we're very happy to take questions right now if you have them. Let's see. So Jane Muggeridge, and apologies if I've not said that right. She was asking about names and spelling variations, and how are you sure that you have the right person, and direct family. And she had lots of different spelling variations for what looks like Melrose, basically. So Mel Ross with 2 S's. And this is Scottish. So born in Traquair, married 1746 Traquair, and then so this person was born 17, or baptized 1713. So a family kind of line there. But her questions were about issues of pronunciation, possible illiteracy, dates, blah blah blah. So I agree. I think that your dates and your time frames, your locations, everything you've said, that all link up. It seems highly plausible to me that's the same family. And I mean, the thing is that the spelling of names is just so mutable in early records, and I mean records now too. People get things misspelt. I mean, I've seen a name spelled 3 different ways in one document. So it's clearly the same person. But but yeah, I would say it all seems reasonable to be the same correct family. But I guess what I would want to do, just to double check, would be to check in the records just to see if there are other families in that area that have the same name, like Melrose, Melross, etc. And just to make sure that there's not more than one family in that area that could be confusing. Who's in which family line. I mean, that might not be the case. It might only be this particular family, but that's definitely something for earlier records where you're relying on parish records in particular. And I think particularly for Scotland, because a lot of those records don't have a lot of corroborating information like occupation and things like that. Just to do what's called family reconstruction with the different records, just to see if places, marriage dates, birth dates all kind of make sense, and that can really help. So if you Google family reconstruction, you'll come up with some information on more information on that. But it's a good technique. So have you had to do family reconstruction, Chris?
No, I didn't know so much about that, actually. That's a useful. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, it's used, I think, a lot in well, I suppose particularly with common names, and also, if you have if you have branches of your family who are all giving the same forenames, because with all of the naming patterns, all of those issues, and so you can get branches. It's like, well, which branch does this Henry James belong to, and which branch does this one belong to? So that's a place where family reconstruction can be really helpful. Okay, well, it's looking like, the 3 dots is just to merge to the window. Right, okay. Then in that case, I will put up the links in the forum. I'll probably do it tomorrow, to be honest, because by the time we log out, I had my flu jab earlier today and I'm starting to feel a bit rough. So I think when we're done, I'm gonna just come off the computer, but I will put them up first thing tomorrow morning when I get back on the computer. So.
Can I just say, talking about family reconstruction, I think Ancestry is one of the worst places for trying to reconstruct your family. They try to reconstruct. So they'll say, here's all your hints, and they will give you a load of families. And you just, sometimes you just have to plow through. So the tree that I've got on Ancestry is not 100% accurate, because sometimes I'll try something to see and think, well, those, yes, that's the same surnames. There's 3 there, 3 there, there's 3 there, but I wouldn't rely on those totally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the hints are great, because
you have to be careful.
You do have to be careful. You have to really look at them and consider, is that, because sometimes it can be really tricky. I mean, I've gotten caught out too. But I think they're wonderful as ways to surface records that you don't know about on Ancestry. So Susan's asking, I was interested to hear what we think about using Ancestry, Find My Past, My Heritage, etc. I think I heard Chris saying on one of the course videos that she found people copying and sharing her research, but she's saying, is this not the point of these places? I'm not quite sure.
Yes, I think yes, I think it is fair enough. I think I had shared too much, and so all the research that I had done, and then it was being sort of taken and shared as their own research, and I think you've sort of got to be careful. Ancestry is kind of really a huge conglomerate of you know, I was researching my mother's family, going right back to Robert Burns, the day of Robert Burns, and some of the things that you find just can't be true or aren't true, or the link is so tenuous that I got a bit scared about that. So I actually made my tree on Ancestry. I would still use Ancestry, and as you say, there's a lot to like about it, and these hints can be very useful. You've just got to be very careful and don't take it as gospel. But yes, I think you're right. It is useful for sharing, but I think when you get to the level that we are now talking about genealogy, that's personal to me. A lot of my research, that I don't particularly want somebody plagiarizing and saying, "Oh, I found this and I've done this and I've done that." So just be careful what you, and also the photographs. You just want to, you maybe don't want to share all the photographs that you have. Swings and roundabouts on that one, or balance it out for yourself. Useful, not useful, you have to decide. And I think it's almost trial and error. And I think I found the error, and I thought, no, I don't want it quite shared that way, because if anybody wants to get in touch, then they can email you, and then you can share kind of legitimately. And that, I don't mind sharing with anybody, but not just someone that's going to sort of pinch all my stuff and put it on their tree, and suddenly they've got 2,000 people on their tree that are actually not connected, and suddenly I got all this information back that's not relevant. So yeah, just be careful. But no, I will stay on Ancestry.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. I mean, I think this is very much a personal decision to make what you share and how much you share. Yeah, I mean, these sites definitely are one of their missions, you know, these and family search as well. And then there are other trees like WikiTree, and there's a couple of other ones where people are trying to create, you know, the family tree, and you know, that's you know, admirable. I think it's good. It's just, as Chris was saying, you just, you know, as we know, you have to be careful about choosing and adding on, you know, that people have the right information. I mean, I have some information on my tree available. Oh yes, and what else was I going to say? Yeah, and the thing about particularly in Ancestry, sharing images is just read their terms and conditions basically, and just to see what then they can do with your images, with, you know, some things you just might not expect. Yeah, so somebody's just reminded us that we were going to show the book, the family record book. Now, Chris can't show you the books and reference stuff she
I know,
used
sorry,
in a video.
Stevie.
So she's just moved, so stuff's in boxes in storage. So all of that stuff, yeah, just not available to her at the moment. But we were going to show the family record, and because a couple of folks wanted to see what those pages actually contain, like what kind of information you could put in those pages. It is, so I'm going to hold it up to my camera just so you can see, and this is just one of a yeah, just see, I don't know if that's going to be fine enough detail for people. Yeah. So, but it is, and I'll just move it up. Probably just need to. So, and I don't, of course, have a scanner at home. So I can't scan it and put in a page, unfortunately. But and then in the middle,
here is mine filled in. But can you read any? I mean, that's the Riepenhausen page.
Yeah, you
and all
can.
the stickers on it, and it's just bits and pieces written everywhere.
Yeah, it's
But it's
really
very. I mean, mine is now falling to bits, and I might have to. I actually did an index at the front of what's, because as you know, all my records are coded, so you'll see the letters beside. I've written in the margins, but it is quite nice to take something like this wherever you go.
Yeah, so it's basically, for you, it's more of an aid memoir, or I suppose a quick reference.
Yeah.
And then the bulk of your information is actually in Family Tree Maker. That's the family software that you're using to store everything.
Because I write down, like I'll write down if I've got a census record, that's a good reference to know whether I've got it or not. Oh yes, I've got that one for 1881. Then I know to go to look for it, rather than have to go and search first of all. This is my kind of quick reference, as you say. Yeah. So yeah.
Because I mean, there's not a great deal of information that you can actually write down here. It's like the census address, but as Chris saying, if you've written it down, you know you have it. It's name, born, address, parents, just general information on the parents, and but then you are referred to the page on which the parents are, so then you can put that information in. Information about marriages, and then just brief details on children, so name, date, address, further information. So
and that's a difficult, sorry, I just that's a difficult one. I would, if you're going to write the children down, leave a space between each child, so you can add when they got married, when they died, and so on and so forth. And just because you end up running out of space, I've written all over the place.
Yeah, you've made it your own.
Yes.
So I mean, it's if you're wanting a physical thing to help you keep track of what you found, who you have information for, then I think something like this is really handy. So this is from the Aberdeen and Northeast Scotland Family History Society, and there's a link on one of the video. I think it's week 3, maybe it's week 2. But other family history societies do the same type of thing.
I actually had an advert, an email through the other day recommending a new one. There's quite a few on Amazon as well, different ones that you can buy, the family record. But that one, I think we sort of learned of in your course all those years ago, Tahisha, and that's the one that stayed with me. And I suppose you get used to working with one. So whichever one you find, you make it work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Paula is asking about, her family tree and all her records are currently all paper-based. Which site would you both recommend, or do you prefer to start loading my research? Well, it depends, Paula.
Oh, that's a hard one.
Yeah, on whether or not you want to. So there's two things you can do from here. You can you can use an online site like Ancestry or Find My Past or My Heritage or Family Search to create an online tree, and that's certainly something you can do. What I would say is if you're linking it to a site that you have to pay for, like Ancestry, Find My Past, and My Heritage, then if you stop paying for that subscription, then you may very well lose access to your tree. Now, having said that, you can download that information in the form of what's called a GEDCOM file, and that's a computer file that any family tree software can read and create a tree for you. Family Search is a free site, and they also offer online tree creation. So that's something that you might consider. If you don't want to worry about a paid for subscription. But to be honest, personally, what I do is I have family tree software that lives on my computer. And I use Family Tree Maker, which I think is what Chris uses as well. And that's what we use on the courses here at the university. But there are a number of other ones. And actually, I think it's maybe week 4 or week 5. No, maybe it's week 6. Sorry, I'm losing track of what's in which week. We do talk about these things and give some suggestions. But you know, there's legacy. There's just a number of different. But so the nice thing about that is that it's resident on your computer. You can choose whether to upload that information and share it on an online tree or not. But then you typically have well, more control. But then there's also usually spaces to add more information than you can add if you're creating your tree on an online space. So there's no right or wrong. It's just different things to think about. But as I say, we do cover some of this stuff on the course. So
I certainly use both. I use Ancestry for linking out there to the and then Family Tree Maker to keep my records. The great thing about something like Family Tree Maker, it produces great charts for you, which is wonderful. So I mean, it is laborious putting all the information in, and you can. So when I did my research, I bought all the records from Scotland's people, and you can sort of inload them into your Family Tree Maker program, and then you can actually have a printout of, you can do you know, your descendants or your ancestors or a family, or you kind of a fan diagram, and there. So whatever you type in, if you remember something your father said and you type that in on his page, that comes out on the report, and that's quite useful, I think, for your relatives to look at. So it's worth having something that's maybe linked to the internet that you pay a subscription or buying one of these programs. There are lots of them, and again, I think I've tried most of them, and it depends how you like your presentation, how you like that front page, how easy it is to reference where you're going, or whether you want a tree first. So it's worth having a look at some of them before. But as I say, I'm still with Family Tree Maker. That's what we use from your class, and some of them are quite laborious. But yeah.
Okay, so I think we've got time to maybe take one more question. And Deborah is asking about census records from Canada in the 1800s. It says a family of hers is listed as German origin, and then the next census year says Dutch. Have you ever heard of this happening? Yeah, definitely. You know, I think it you know, it just depends on what people feel like saying on the day. It's self-reported. So I think particularly I often find place of birth changing, and you know, somebody decides one year, oh well, I was born in Detroit, and the next year they might think, well, actually, you know, I was actually born in Dearborn. So it gives the you know, the slightly different. So it's just but German Dutch to me is not so far away from each other. So
that's a hard one.
But yeah, difficult to know then where to go back. And of course, I suppose it's, you know, German wasn't actually German at a certain point. It depends on the census, depends on when. Germany
exactly.
German,
when it was a lot of individual states, but there was 2 languages there. That's an unusual one to mix, I would think. Unless it's on the border, or as you say, when Germany was still a whole lot of individual states.
But actually that Dutch might be, well, Dutch, German, I don't know, that is a bit odd, but it's
not, no, nothing is beyond the, I mean, everything is just possible when it comes to records, as you'll find as you go along.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right, so Susan's saying, she's stopped paying for Ancestry, but she can still see trees and factual information, but she's lost access to the sources. Yeah. So, okay, it's good to know that you can still see the tree, but probably can't actually,
Oh, and that's very true, Jean, that you can go to Ancestry, you can go to your library and use Ancestry.
Yeah, the thing about the library Ancestry is that you wouldn't be able to create a tree yourself because it's not your personal Ancestry account. But yeah, you can certainly look at the sources.
Search.
Yep, and you could save the sources. So
Mm.
okay, great. Well, we're just coming up to 5 o'clock. So
I
thanks.
know, it flies past,
Yeah,
always does.
it really does. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for everybody for
Yes, many thanks. It's lovely. It's just lovely to think that so many people are getting hooked on something that we both love. It's great. And once you're hooked, you are hooked for the rest of your life.
It's very true. You might find yourself not having time for it for a little while, but
Oh
then
gosh,
it always
yeah,
draws you back.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah. But it's great. I mean, it's great because you're always learning something new and yeah, making connections. So it's really a good thing. So well, thank you so much, Chris, for
Oh, you're so welcome. Lovely to see everybody. And
yeah,
nice to see you, Tahisha.
it's good to see you too. Right. Well, best of luck with your move and
Thank you.
unpacking and all that
Yes.
stuff when you get to it. So yeah, we'll be in touch. So great. Well, yeah, everybody take care. And yeah, we'll have another chat session on the 6th week, the Friday, the 6th week. And I'll be joined then. Well, there'll be the first one that I'll do I'll be talking about further things to further your genealogical education. But then the second one, I'll be joined by Graham Holton, and we'll talk about DNA points and also just general questions as well. But that's been yeah, it's always great to have him along. So great. Well, thanks for everybody. I'm glad you're enjoying the course, and thanks so much for coming along today.
Thanks everyone, wherever you are.
Yep.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.